In this video, I'd like to address chapters 13 and 14. Chapter 13 focuses on Jack the Ripper, and chapter 14 focuses on Lizzie Borden. And so what I'd like to do, though, instead of going over these cases, that is, our authors, Dr. Holmes and Holmes, do a superb job of presenting the cases in the two chapters. So I'm not going to just repeat that. But what I'd like to do is to briefly address what we've learned in the profiling course and some of the materials. But also, I'd like you to start thinking about comparative analysis of violent crimes. So I want you to think about comparing and contrasting Jack the Ripper crimes as well as the Lizzie Borden situation. Interestingly enough, in both of these cases, there was never a perpetrator who was convicted of the murders. So that still remains unknown. Jack the Ripper case has been a case of great interest for many, many years, and as we know, these killings occurred in 1888 in London. Your authors do an excellent job of presenting the victim histories, their personal history, their criminal background, residence and locations the night of the killing, and the medical reports. And then, of course, the question becomes, who was Jack the Ripper? And we can see that there has been several hypotheses. There have been several books and articles written saying that Jack the Ripper was, even in one case, someone believes that Jack the Ripper was actually female, although most of the researchers and writers believe Jack the Ripper was actually male. But this still remains an uncertainty. Also, in the case of Lizzie Borden, your authors present the key people, the murders, the crime scene, autopsy reports from that time period, as well as their additional thoughts on the case. That certainly there were other suspects in the case, and again, we can compare and contrast these two cases. But I also have on the PowerPoint some of the slides from earlier in the semester on how would you profile these cases, but then, taking into consideration possibilities of variables such as age, sex, race, intelligence, education, family, residence, employment, psychosexual development, how the interrogations took place with these two cases. And then also I would begin to ask you if these two cases, the crime scenes, the behaviors, relate to the different types of the organized and disorganized offenders. Do we have a disorganized asocial offender or offenders, or an organized non-social offender or offenders? And then how are the crime scenes similar and different? Do the crimes seem to be planned or spontaneous? Do they target a stranger or someone that's known? Do they personalize or depersonalize the victim? Do we think they have controlled conversation or minimal? Do they control the crime scene, or is it a chaotic? Do we have violence that takes place over time, or sudden violence? Are restraints used? Are there any signs of sexual activity before or after death? Are the bodies moved? Are there weapons that are used, weapons that are left at the crime scene, weapons that are taken from the crime scene? What type of physical evidence is left at the crime scene? So what I ask you to do is to reread or read these cases, and reread if you'd like, thinking about how you actually would use the profiling material, and then beginning to think also, well, what theory or theories might help you explain the perpetrator psychology and sociology of these two crimes. And the historical aspects certainly are very relevant, as well, as you can see in the autopsies, which seem very strange by today's standards, but probably were very well received at that particular time back in the late 1800s. So here what I want you to do is critically evaluate the profiling information, see how things connect or they do not connect, how things, themes seem to cluster and how they don't cluster, how things seem to make sense and how more questions appear. So basically here we kind of put together a lot of the material that we covered and begin to ask ourselves, well, what's really going on here? How do we classify, what typologies do we use regarding the perpetrator or perpetrators. Of course, we can't say with certainty whether there was one perpetrator or more than one perpetrator in either of these two cases. So there's certainly a lot more questions that remain, and I doubt that these cases will be resolved with a definitive acknowledgement of a perpetrator, that these cases will continue to be debated just like they have for, the past 100 plus years. And this wraps up this video.